So here we are, festive games are over, Christmas and New Year's is finished. Happy New Year to you guys. I wanted to touch on the two games that were on New Year's yesterday. We had the Ospreys and Cardiff, and then the Scarlets and Dragons. I'll start with the first game, which was a terrible game, to be honest. 13 all. The scoreline says it all to me. Really low quality. It was a packed Arms Park, but the players didn't really put on the display that we were hoping to see. These games always get a bit like of an arm wrestle, and so it proved. Cardiff started really well, came out the blocks really fast, putting the pressure on and the pace onto the Ospreys, scoring early. And then, to be fair to the Ospreys, they took a while to get going, but once they got going, responded really well. A couple of tries went begging, one for Morgan Morris, where Ruben Morgan Williams makes an excellent dart off the scrum, and eventually Morgan Morris literally knocks it on as he's putting it down over the line. So Cardiff kept the lead, but it was really the Ospreys had plenty of opportunities to bring it back. No one really sort of managed to get on top of each other. There was a lot of play in the middle third. No one creating anything special or anything of any high quality. And then probably the biggest incident of the game then came not long before half-time, where Dan Thomas goes in for an excellent jackal, actually gets the ball, and as he's picking the ball up, Fender tries to clear him out and misses him, goes over the top of him a little bit, tries to pull him down with him as he's gone past, lands all his weight on the leg. Lucky for Dan Thomas, he wasn't injured, and it was a superb steal. But Fender, the ref went to the TMO, and the only real option was it was a really high degree of danger, and it was a red card to James Fender. Desperately unlucky for him, because from what I've seen of him, he's not a dirty player, and it just seemed like it was mistimed. He wasn't trying to target a limb or anything like that, but those are the rules, and I think it should be that way. You've got to protect these players, especially when they're in a jackling position. So many injuries and blown knees have come from being in that position. At this point then, you expect Cardiff to take over the game and really just make the pressure tell. It was a long time to go without a player, over half of the game. Cardiff sort of got a little bit of a boost from this. Tried to play, was causing Ospreys trouble, but Ospreys just held out to make it to half time. That gave them a massive boost of morale, and then that sort of like took the wind out of Cardiff's sails a little bit. And then the second half was just, it was awful. No disrespect to the players. They obviously, they've been off for Christmas and stuff, but it just really wasn't good enough. It was a terrible standard. I was bored out of my mind, I got to be honest, watching it. And I'm an extremely passionate rugby fan, and I'm a big, massive Cardiff supporter. And I was literally just pulling my hair out. Both teams just knocking the ball on. Neither could get the set piece going. Cardiff were on top in the line out, stealing Ospreys' ball, were dominant at maul time, but then at scrum time, the Ospreys were in complete control. Even when the subs came and different players, Domachowski came on, he didn't really get on top. He got pinged a few times. Litterick comes on and doesn't make a difference. It was awful, I gotta be honest. I was just really disappointed. It was good to see Louis Hennessy get a start. He's come from Bath on loan to Cardiff. He's gone through the Cardiff pathway, ended up over at Bath through university, I believe. And he's come back because Cardiff are a little bit light in the centre. So that's good. Wales under 20 product. He's a big boy. We want to see these players back in Wales. Maybe this is like a first step in him maybe coming back to Wales and getting a regional spot. On the Ospreys' hand, they'll probably be the happier of the two sides, although they will probably rue the opportunities that they missed, because there was a few times where they actually scored. I think Morgan Williams scored, and it ended up going back a few phases because Nagy knocked it on in the ruck. Nagy also had a moment of a bit of a rush of the blood to the head, where there was a penalty 5 metres out. Could have easily kicked for the corner and gone for the driving line out. He tries to take a quick tap penalty. Excellent tackle from Teddy Williams, and they lose the opportunity. Cardiff steal the ball. Again, like I said, very scrappy. really low standard of skills on both sides. I think if you'd have offered both teams going into the festive derbies a win and a draw, they both would have taken it. But yesterday probably felt like a little bit of a loss to both, because they both had chances and probably should have won it. The battle of the tens between Sheedy and Dan Edwards, I think Dan Edwards come out comfortably on top, scoring a try himself, actually slipping out of a absolute powder puff tackle from Sheedy. Not just him, there was other players, I believe it might have been Domachowski. It was about 2 or 3 of them. They all just slipped out of him, and he goes in under the post. He also made a big defensive effort in the backfield, because when Fender went off at half-time, they brought Ratty on and took Nagy off at fullback. So Edwards was running at 10 in attack, and then in defence he was sweeping as a fullback, and he did an excellent job. So he can be really happy with him putting his hand up during that game. And Sheedy really looked a little bit out of his depth at times. This could have been a game where he stamped his authority. Once Cardiff were a man up, you would expect a player of his experience to be able to put them in the right positions and make stuff happen and get them going forward. And it just didn't click. So I think that's a dent in his selection for the Six Nations. Also on the Cardiff side, discipline is really let them down. I know Ospreys got red card, but Cardiff had 2 yellows for just amalgamation and build-up of penalties. So something to work on there. Positive for Cardiff, Teddy Williams, the last 2 games has been absolutely phenomenal. He's playing out of his skin. And with Beard being out for the Six Nations, there's possibly going to be a chance for someone to get a spot with potentially Dav Jenkins, and then another, whether he sticks with Rowlands or what after Rowlands is autumn, where he was not great. Is he going to retain his position? I don't know. But Teddy Williams is really screaming to be picked, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity in this Six Nations. He's having an excellent season. And then we move on to the other game, which was, of course, Scarlets hosting the Dragons. Scarlets ended up running out very comfortable or fairly comfortable winners, 32-15. To be honest, I think that scoreline a little bit flatters the Dragons. The first half, they were completely outplayed, weren't in the game at all. Scarlets were just more physical, more creative, faster, more desire, everything. And it was a poor showing in that first half from the Dragons, which is really disappointing. They looked, they needed to go down there and really try and get something out of this game to make something of this festive period. And they just didn't turn up, really, if we're being totally honest. For the Scarlets, they played some really nice rugby. Like I said, really physical in their carries, a lot of intent in what they were trying to do, and they created chances. Players playing really well. Sam Costello, I thought, looked really good at 10, pulling the strings, just doing everything simple, kicked well at goal as well. By half-time, Scarlets were out of sight, to be totally honest. They started sort of taking their foot off the gas and sort of chucking the ball around a bit rather than, stick to their processes. And then in the second half, the Dragons came back into it a bit. To be fair to them, the players they brought off the bench made a difference. Shea Hope was a real catalyst for speeding up the game and some creativity. But it was more due to the Scarlets taking their foot off the gas, and then some ill discipline came into it. Again, Team Plumtree, his discipline is just really, really not up to scratch. I understand he's a player who likes to play on the edge, but he's so bad at not getting caught. And I'm sure now the refs are looking for it, because everybody knows that he's got a terrible disciplinary record. And I think referees are probably targeting him now because it's easy to pick him out. There was a couple of silly ones where he just didn't need to give away a penalty, trying to cause issues at a ruck, and he's going at it with his foot. I know players do it, but it was just so blatant. And then there was another one where Shea Hope took a quick tap and went. The pass went, and it was 2 or 3 seconds later, and he's just come in with a shoulder charge. Then he finally did get a yellow card for, it was Shane Lewis-Hughes, comes on a long run up and they tackle him, but it's a no-arm tackle. He's just dipped his shoulder and put the shoulder into him, and the ref finally had enough of it. So something he really needs to work on, because he's got all the minerals to be a great player, but discipline let him down, and these were the type of things that made Dragons come back into the game. In fairness, they didn't give up, which they could have easily done. They endeavoured to carry on going, and this, like I said, subs really did actually come on and make an impact, which they needed to do. But for the Dragons, it's another really disappointing fixture. They don't seem to create anything from open play. The one opportunity they did have was Rio Dyer off a kick, and it's a poor chase, and he goes about 40 yards on a great run, but he's got two men outside him, and it's like 2 against 1, and he doesn't know what to do. The defender does well backing off and sort of forcing him to make a decision, and he doesn't, and he just ends up carrying it in, and there goes an opportunity. The only tries they scored were like pick and go around the edges, where it was like prolonged pressure, but they're just struggling to create anything. They've tried a few different outside halves now, and I think that's obviously it starts with the pack. They're not getting stability at set piece, which they didn't in this game, but then the outside half is just not creating enough for them, and I think they're finding issues just getting some go forward or creating any sort of patterns of play. And when it goes behind, they finally put a move together and just passes going to the floor or going behind the player and making him check his run and stuff. It's a real tough one for Philo Tiatia, because what does he do now? They've tried 3 different outside halves. Angus O'Brien has probably been the pick of the bunch, to be fair. His kicking game has been good, but they're not. He's just, I don't know if he's naturally a 10 to control the game, but what do they do from this point in? It's going to be really tough, because they would have targeted one of these games out of this festive break as a win. You could argue they deserve to beat Cardiff, but they just haven't got that killer instinct to get over the line. Thought maybe when they beat Newcastle it would be a bit of a catalyst, but it's just sort of reverted back to the struggles. So it's really a tough one for the Dragons and their supporters. I really do feel for the Dragon supporters. The Scarlets, on the other hand, they'll be happy to have this one after the tough loss against the Ospreys at the death. They needed a get-right game. It's probably the best game they could have really asked for at home to the Dragons, and they'll be disappointed with how they went through that sort of third quarter of the game, and they let the Dragons back into it. But really, the Dragons never looked like they were going to win the game, and the Scarlets looked like when they needed to take up a next level, they could do it, and so it proved. They'll just be happy to move now past this the Derbies and hopefully make their way up the league a little bit now, because they're really close. They play some really good stuff. They got good players. They got a good mixture of experience and youth, and also grunt and physicality. But they just lack in that sort of clinicalness and the ability to play consistently over 80 minutes and close a game out. Like today, they should have never let Dragons back in, and arguably you could say against a better team, like what happened against the Ospreys, another team might come back and snatch it. But I think they'll be happy with where they're going. They're better than where they were last year, noticeably, and there is a chance for them to continue to move up the table. Was a little bit disappointing with the capacity at the Scarlets. There didn't really seem much of an atmosphere there. I know it's a big ground. You could just hear there was like one or two random guys. I don't know what side of the fence they were, but I think they were Dragons fans, because they were hurling a fair bit of abuse at Costello. But you could just like hear single voices, and that was a strange one, considering the Scarlets went quite far ahead. But yeah, I thought the derbies have been so. I think both the Cardiff were involved in have been poor games, but I think the Scarlets have been involved in 2 good games. This one with the Dragons and Scarlets, you can argue, wasn't a massive contest, but there was moments of real quality in there. What'll be interesting now is where the teams progress going through to the next few weeks and into Europe and then into the Six Nations. How they're going to manage. The sun's just come in and absolutely cleaned my my camera out. But Elliot D pulled out of this one late, and I don't know what exactly the injury was, so that'll be one to keep an eye on with Dewi Lake being injured. But there was a few interesting battles, like I spoke about the Dan Edwards one, the Ellis Bevan one as well, with Ruben Morgan Williams. I think Morgan Williams come out on top of that. And then like Basham and McLeod was probably comfortably come out on top of that one. So there's these good battles that we got to see now, and if these players that did well in these derbies have a good next couple of weeks, we could see them getting an opportunity to be called up for the Wales squad. But I'll probably do some preview stuff, maybe some positional squad battle stuff going into the selection. But for me, that's it for now, and I will catch you on the next one.